Welcome to Fresh Off the Board. This is a podcast to help students reconnect with. Actually, it's a podcast to help me reconnect with students I've known over the years, and also make those connections work for our current students. Today, I'll be interviewing Aditya Agarwal. He graduated from Modern School Barakhamba in 2012, and then went on to study at UCLA. Did a business degree, which is named differently. It's not a Bachelor of Business, but it's more like a managerial economics. So we'll get to know a little bit more about that, his interest in entrepreneurship, his journey so far, and his new project of launching a gin in India and selling it abroad. So, without much sort of further ado, I would ask you the first question about UCLA and how was it like settling in a new environment coming from Delhi?
Well, to give you an honest answer, the first 2 months I hated it. I still remember my parents went with me to drop me off to UCLA. Orientation went great, move-in great went great. I was super excited. But the evening my parents were actually supposed to leave back for India, I pretty much had a panic attack. I was like, guys, I cannot stay here. It's a foreign country. I don't know anyone over here. What am I going to do? And I still remember my mom actually missed her flight. She came back, turned around from LAX, drove back to UCLA to kind of console the little baby. But I guess that was also a part of the journey. It took me about a nice, I would say, 2 months to adjust to that environment. But after that, it was pretty much the best years of my life, right? Like I could never think of a decision, any other decision or any other choice that I could have
So,
made
what
at
do you
that.
think helped you adapt and sort of learn to settle in?
I would say I know this is a cliched answer, but I would say just being myself. Not trying to do things a little bit differently, not trying to be a different person, trying to fit into a social setting, right? That was the biggest thing because as a kid coming out of Delhi, as a kid who's been sheltered for all your life, right? When you put into a foreign environment, where you put into an environment where you kind of expected to be your best self in a little different ways, you still don't realize the meaning of being your best self in those initial years when you're kind of 17, 18 as a freshman, right?
Yeah,
So
well
just
said. Yeah, I think that definitely.
yeah, so just kind of coming to terms with that and realizing that everybody is in the same boat as you over here, right? Everybody has those insecurities, everybody has those anxieties, and everybody is trying to adjust. So the best thing that you could do is just be yourself. Talk about your fears, talk about your anxieties, talk about your homesickness. Just be upfront that, hey guys, it's like I really miss going back home. I really miss sitting on my recliner and doing nothing.
So all of this would be really also impacting the way you look at academics. So how did you like then sink into the fact that I'm getting comfortable? Did your interest in academics also sort of egg you to settle down? What is the academic experience at UCLA like?
So again, the academic experience, let me divide it into two parts. Initial period, yeah, you do have those teething issues. You do have those issues that you're coming to terms with a change in kind of a CBSE environment versus like a American undergrad college environment. But to give you the overall picture, academics are great at UCLA. Like in terms, they have great faculty, they have great programs. I would say more than the academic classes and programs, the mentorship that you get from your professors and the access that you have to co-curricular activities that kind of relate to your major. That's what adds to that entire academic experience, and that's what actually makes the better of the academic experience.
Great. So about this business degree and it's named managerial economics, how does it work? What are the requirements? Are there very strict requirements to get into that program? And
So it's not managerial economics, it's called business economics at
okay,
UCLA. The requirements are, so when you get in as an undergrad, you get in as a pre-business economics or a pre-economics major, and you have to maintain 3.3 GPA and have something called a primary score, which calculates basically your major requirements for the classes. And like some classes are weighed a little higher, some classes are weighed a little lower. So you get this thing called a primary score, and they have like a threshold of a primary score that you need to maintain and kind of have that number by a junior year to be accepted into that, formally accepted into that business economics major.
great. And how was it like? Was it compared to a NYU Stern or a Wharton UPenn? Do you think it has the same sort of structure?
See, NYU Stern, or probably even if you look at USC, they're kind of a little bit different. UCLA's Busy Econ program is more academic and in terms of accounting focused, rather than it being focused on those case studies and rather it being focused on those actual managerial science principles. So I would say that's what forms the main difference between UCLA's Busy Econ program and if you compare it to something like Stern or Marshall at USC.
Good. I'm going to switch gears now and ask you a few rapid fire questions. The first one is in 3 adjectives, how would you describe your strengths? Like, pick 3 adjectives.
Honest, accountable, and agile. That's a new word.
Right. So cloud and agile. Well, if you were to then reflect on maybe a mistake or a big goof up or failure, what would you say that was?
I wouldn't call it a mistake or a goof up or failure, but I would say kind of a big learning experience that I had was in the latter years of my management consulting experience, where I was working for PwC. Kind of not realizing what is the larger impact and the larger, let's say, value of the work that you're working on, especially in a big corporation like PwC. You do tend to get lost in the crowd, right? And again, coming out of college, you're also again in a completely new learning curve, right? So it's only at the tail end of that learning curve or 1 year into that learning curve that you actually realize that, okay, fine, this is something great that I'm doing, right? But 2 years into that journey, I came to a point where I was like, I don't think I'm adding any value over here at PwC. Maybe I should go back and start my own business. Maybe I should go back and help my dad with his business, right? And I was in that new graduate kind of mind frame where the term of adding value or the term of kind of having an impact by your actions is taking the better half of your mind. So I feel that in hindsight, I could have given that a little bit more time. I could have given the PwC stint a little bit more time. I could have kind of eased out, I would say, eased out my inclination towards getting back to India and kind of slowed it down a little bit and enjoyed that experience also, which now I feel is a very, very valuable experience.
So how do you translate skills that you learned in school and then your first job at PwC or jobs leading to PwC and then finally being this entrepreneur that you are? And tell us a little bit about the company that you've started.
Right. See, to be honest, a lot of your academic learnings don't really translate into the real room environment, whether it be a corporate job or especially entrepreneurship. Nobody really cares what grade you got in your economics class or your accounting class at the end of the day. What really matters is how you kind of interacted with your peers, what relationships you built with your peers, and what relationships you built with your faculty and kind of the larger community that was there around you at that point of time. To give you a little bit about the company that I'm doing right now, I started this company called Spaceman and Company, which is a think tank that specializes in creative development and kind of helping entrepreneurs think creatively and building like ultra cool, kind of never thought about before products. So under Spaceman and Company, we've done a multiple projects, kind of works like a think tank meets a consulting firm, kind of meets a product development firm. So the first major project that we're kind of, apart from our consulting gigs that we're kind of working on right now, is this version of a craft gin. So this is a craft gin, one of the first craft gins of its kind, first craft gin using all Ayurvedic botanicals, and first craft gin coming out of Asia, which is using hemp seeds as one of its botanicals.
So there's this whole thing about gin and how malaria was something that it's got a connection during
Right.
the colonial times. Do you think that's where the Ayurveda part is coming in?
In a way, yes, and especially so gin does not have a direct connection to malaria, except
Health.
tonic water that does with the quinine. and especially our dear friend Mr. Donald Trump's hydroxychloroquine is making the rounds again and getting quinine back into the action. But no, the reason we get Ayurveda into this picture is because what makes a gin is botanicals. Botanicals are basically nice little herbs and spices, kind of aromatic berries or fruits, fruit peels, dried spices, and things like this. And when you talk about herbs, when you talk about spices, when you talk about aromatics, the first kind of picture that comes to you is your mother's spice box. At least that's what it was for me. Memories of me walking into my kitchen, having like this nice little box of Indian spice and this nice little box of your Italian herbs and seasonings and kind of seasonings and flavorings that have been sourced from travels across the world, right? So, and I wanted to build something that was inherently Indian, and hence trying to connect that those herbs with kind of that Indian connotation, we realized that okay, Ayurveda might be the right way to play it.
Super. So, if you were to outline your goals for this gin launch and the company, uh, do you see something audacious, like something that's coming out from India and becoming well recognized?
Yes, definitely. The plan is to kind of be Indian gin that is made for the rest of the world. There are so many. I believe in the power of stories. I believe at the end of the day, human beings are storytellers. So there's so many untold stories that I want to kind of tell with this gin, and these are Indian stories. They're stories about like modern India. These are kind of have a slight element of fantasy to it, but India has to be the heart of these stories. So yeah, definitely the plan is to kind of have this gin which is Indian at heart, but it's kind of built for the global audience.
So I'm going to talk a bit, ask you some question about managing an entrepreneurial venture. So you're working in a consulting company is very different from hiring, training, working with people. What challenges have you faced as growing up as a leader in the organization you started?
Well, multiple levels of challenges because when we talk about an organization that is a consulting firm or kind of a Fortune 500 companies, a Fortune 500 company, they have no dearth of funding, right? So even small little things that the budget that is going towards hiring or building a team or using the right software tool, the right using like a right CRM system, ultimately when you're doing it something in any venture in a bootstrap manner, those challenges really kind of come up and present themselves in unique manners. So you have to adapt, and especially the cultural differences between working in a foreign global environment versus the cultural differences that you have working in kind of an Indian environment, right? Those are again very big challenges that need to be overcome. So maybe not per se in my venture with Spaceman and Company in Gin, but I also kind of help out with my family business, which is a more traditional business of manufacturing plastic films and industrial chemicals. Um, a very conservative, a very traditional kind of workforce where people have been with my father and with my grandfather for the last probably 30, 40 years. They've kind of seen my father grow up, if not seen me grow up. So challenges that present themselves in that industry are mind-boggling. Like when you have to deal with labor, when you have to deal with the production activities that are happening on the factory floor. Those kind of challenges just are completely different from the challenges that, let's say, I face with Spaceman and Company, trying to have a more refined team versus me working for a consulting firm, which was again like a completely 360-degree turnaround from either of the two environments.
Fascinating. I think just learning on the go and adapting is again a good sort of central theme in any entrepreneur's journey. What advice would you give students who are currently in a limbo, planning to go to college but are stuck, and also students who have just graduated and suddenly lost their first job?
Right.
Uh, what do you think? How do you deal with uncertainty?
See, uncertain. The only thing certain about getting a US education, getting a great education, and having aspirations for a great career is that element of uncertainty, right? If we take out that element of uncertainty, there is kind of no excitement, there is kind of no joy that is left around. So for students that are incoming freshmen or probably incoming grad students, um, I would say hang in there, right? Humanity is going to overcome this. We're going to have a solution sooner rather than later. Yes, there are chances that that fall quarter might be remote. That fall semester might be remote learning. But I guess this 1 quarter or 1 semester of a period should not hamper that larger goal of 4 years that kind of lies ahead of you, right? That experience of that larger experience of 4 years is definitely going to overcome this challenging few months that we have ahead of us. And in terms of fresh graduates, unfortunately, whose internships with full-time offers kind of have been moved to remote positions, or in some unlikely situations have been cancelled or deferred. Again, this is a great time. With crisis comes opportunity, right? Um, Put on your thinking caps, ample amount of different things that you can work on online, skill development, learning. Like 3 years back, you did not have platforms like Udemy. 3 years back, you could not like really log into YouTube and have like an entire course that you could do. Yeah, there were scattered videos, of course, that's been around for 10 years, but that structure of learning is kind of much more prominent in these years. So I
So
would say
do you have like a sort of set go-to YouTube channel or a influencer you listen to, or authors that you care about?
So I'm loving Masterclass these days. For people who don't know, Masterclass is this new little streaming app which is there. Some of the best minds in the world are giving lectures, kind of have their own courses designed on Masterclass. So that's a great resource. It's a great resource, super well designed, super good content. I've been listening to Bob Iger, who's the CEO of Disney, on creative thinking and strategy development. So that's in fact something that I've been really enjoying the last couple of days of quarantine.
Super. It was fascinating having this conversation with you, Aditya, and look forward to inviting you to our panel discussions where we'll have 2 or maybe 3 other students join me in a fireside. So if you were to sort of summarize your life in a sentence so far and what your aspirations are for the future, how would you do that in two sentences, I guess?
Good question. Kind of puts me in the spot early in the morning.
Right.
Um, I would say it's a tough question.
Yeah, life is a tough question. Maybe that's your answer. So yeah, feel free to send me the responses in.
Yeah, I'll send you the response. But if I have
Yeah.
to kind of really summarize it, I would say that yeah, it's been a tough ride. It's been a fascinating ride, but I guess there are many stones to turn at this point of time, and it's going to be great. I'm pretty excited about the future.
Thank you again, Aditya. Have a great weekend ahead.
Thanks, you
Bye.
too.